Earlier today I saw a post by somebody saying it was ridiculous to spend less than 5 or 10k on a minimum viable product. And today I'll be showing you why that is not the case. So this person was actually on Twitter saying something like, oh, if you build something for several $100, you're ridiculous, blah, 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 whatever. And maybe to an extent he's right. I mean, I don't know in what niche he's in, but let's just look into V0 right here. Because earlier I made a bolt.new video, which is a very similar tool to be honest. And it worked pretty well. I was pretty impressed with how quickly you can build a WebGIS. And what I did right now is I just prompted it with, I want to build an MVP WebGIS. Not even proper English, not clear whatever I wanted at all. But it just started building something. So right away it started writing code in React. I'll show you how that works in a bit. And show us the preview of what it is looking like. And I mean, sure, this is not perfect, but it's something, right? I mean, I didn't specify what I wanted, what the use case was, whatever. But in one prompt, it started building this. So let me do another prompt and I'll show you exactly how it works. By the way, if you want to learn more about GIS and map making, as well as AI and coding, you can join this community for free down below. I hope to see you inside. So starting out, we'll just tell the chat agent that we want the markers to show up as soon as we click. And it's also saying that there's a possibility to use drawing tools and pop-up information. Now that is not exactly working just yet, so please make sure the UI looks much nicer and implement buttons that actually show up and function. Also make sure the layer controls and marker icon do work. So this is just the second prompt, right? I mean, I didn't use a system prompt. This is genuinely the first time I even opened up V0, but we're trying it. So obviously I did use bolt.new before, which is more or less the same thing. And I actually have a premium subscription there. I don't have one here. Might have to change it around. But as you can see, the agent is building for us. And while it is building, I'm seeing which exact framework it picked, because I didn't even tell it to use React or use any other framework, and what it is exactly doing, right? I mean, I see which files are being restructured, I see what code is being written, and altogether, I don't really have to do much. I mean, I've sent it 3 sentences so far, and we have a functional, at least somewhat functional, WebGIS MVP right here. Here we have the opportunity or the possibility to move the base map, which honestly it would look better if there was an actual icon on there. We have zoom in and zoom out buttons. We have the opportunity, and we can place markers, but the images are not working. So I will actually tell it to implement a better UI, because that's one thing that AI is not perfect with, right? AI is not going to make the perfect UI. AI is not going to be perfect in actually making a UX or a design that looks good, but this is a good start, and that's the one thing that matters for now. Make sure the UI is full screen regarding the map, so we want the map to be full screen. Add buttons on top of that. Allow me to zoom in and out. Implement a better marker icon. This one is not working. And better pop-ups. Let's just keep it at that for now. And once again, this is just a plain English prompt, and I'm not touching the keyboard right now, just to clarify that. We're actually just looking at V0, the AI agent building. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty impressive in my opinion. I mean, I do understand a few basics in coding, but I don't know the actual fundamentals. I'm not a web developer, if anything, but what we do see right here is an app being coded in React. It's using HTML, it is using images, it is writing code. I mean, I can obviously clarify it even more and go deep into which functions are being changed or which lines of code are being used, what type of frameworks it's using, but all I know is that it's using TypeScript, so it's basically a React app. I know I can deploy it in a minute, if I want to, I know I can download the entire code or copy it to another project and add it to a code base, fork it, share it, whatever. I can go to the console, but I mean, I don't have to use it if it's actually doing that by itself and showing the preview by itself. So let's get back into the preview. This is what the map is looking like now. So it's already a full screen map right now. When we click markers, the images still don't work. That's sad. However, we do have our zoom buttons. I think the zoom in button is not working due to some other modal being in front of it on my screen right now, but it does work. And we have a clear markers button as well. Anyways, the buttons don't look that good. I actually would like to use buttons that are using a tooltip. Show no text on the buttons, that would be great. Implement a header bar where I can toggle drawing. Implement a working marker or just a point simply, and where I can toggle drawing and base maps and choose the other options and search. And I'm going to tell it to use OpenStreetMap /nominatum API. And I mean, I don't know if that's even related to OpenStreetMap, but that's where I know the nominatum API from. That being said, it's going to help us fix all of those things. I'm pretty impressed with V0 so far, to be honest. I previously made a video on bolt.new, as you've seen, possibly. I think this is worse, to be honest, at least from what I've seen so far. It is a very impressive application just by itself. Like, we literally can give it 3 sentences and it's coding an entire app for us. That's super impressive. But that being said, I mean, I don't think it will actually handle big structured projects that well, because currently it's just working with a few files. It's pretty easy. And if you use like Cursor or a different application, it's going to be harder to outsource everything to AI. You actually have to do this yourself. At least the structuring, like the engineering part, you'll probably need to understand what you're doing to do that properly and productively. But this is looking really good so far. This is not looking that great so far. But let's just keep this in. I mean, we'll show the honest truth of how this is working. But either way, this is pretty impressive and nice. Debugging is part of your software development process, so we'll just do whatever we have to do. Let's see if we can send this bit of code there. And while we're at it and waiting, let's actually look into the costs of V0 as well. So what I'm seeing right here is there is a free plan, a premium plan with custom domains on published blogs, everything in free, higher messaging limits. So we'll hit a message limit at some point in this video, most likely. Centralized billing on Vercel. And well, there's also an enterprise option. The only thing that I'm kind of missing here is using different models. That's what I ideally would like to do. I mean, it is still a very impressive and nice application, but I would want to use like Claude, or at least know which model I am currently using. Sadly, that is not the case right now. So I've just been trying to debug this for like 3 minutes. The only thing that I would say right now is I think V0 is using models that are not as aware of WebGIS applications and WebGIS fundamentals. So currently we have this WebGIS being built in Leaflet, or at least using Leaflet. And it is aware of what Leaflet is and the fact that it should use that, because nowhere in this whole conversation have I prompted it to use that. But that being said, I think bolt.new is more agentic in WebGIS applications, at least because it is actually aware of which models are there, which models it can use, and which frameworks it can use, rather. And I think it is also slightly more agentic in fixing errors, but I'm not entirely sure about that. I don't have enough information to judge that with. Either way, let's just fix this as the system prompt, or at least the prompt that is already built in this button, gives us. So that's the actual prompt. Like, this is the error that we get. Please revise it to address the error. That is what it is doing right now. And in the meantime, I've actually opened up Cursor, and this is a code editor similar to Visual Studio Code, which you may be familiar with, where you can actually, well, have control over these folders a little more yourself, because as you can see right here, we have our actual files on the left, we have our code in the middle, and on the right we have the chat and the composer and whatnot, right? And the terminal at the bottom as well, visually right now. Considering the UI is more so focused on the code itself and the file structure, and it's actually got the chat and the composer, like the AI agent, on the right, that means that we are more so focused on the actual structure and the engineering part, because now we actually see whenever the AI is adding stuff that it shouldn't be adding. As of right now, that is not the case, but I've experienced that before, where AI just starts to add in a whole new folder that is completely unnecessary and over-engineers everything. You don't want that to happen. So make sure that you're aware of that. Make sure that you actually look at the file structure that AI is building for you. And also make sure that you're aware, like, which frameworks is the AI using. Like right now it's using React, obviously, and it's used, in this case, probably Leaflet as well. This is another project of mine, which is not really that important. But be sure to actually use the proper frameworks, use the proper tools, but be aware that AI is building this quite quickly. Anyway, that being said, these changes, we have a WebGIS MVP. I apologize for the persistent error. Well, the error is back, so it's not ideal. It's not fixed just yet. And I think this is also still part of it. Like, part of the reality of building with AI as an agent on your site is just not as productive. So current review for V0 as a WebGIS developer or WebGIS develop helper, not ideal. Not as great as Bolt.new, but pretty close. So I'm definitely going to keep looking at the developments here, because maybe this will overtake Bolt.new at some point in building these applications that I'm trying to build right now. Either way, it doesn't really matter which tool or code or framework that you're using. I mean, the framework does matter, but the actual AI tool that you're using to build something obviously doesn't matter that much. But because either way, we can download this code or deploy it and then use that code in Cursor, for example, where we have full control over everything, because that is something that is, I think, not ideal in this case, because I think V0 or Bolt.new, it's ideal for building a MVP like this, which doesn't look perfect, but it looks like a mockup that we could actually show to a potential client. And that's the huge difference that these tools give us right now. So make sure to use it and stay ahead or stay on top of the trends in what's happening here, because this is pretty revolutionary, if anything. That being said, it's still not working ideal. The button is working. We finally have working markers. We can also draw on the map, but the actual buttons are not showing up just yet. We can remove everything, and we can move the satellite image. And one more thing that I then need to test is if the search bar is working. I'm not sure why it is not working right now. And I think this is just kind of the problem of V0. To be honest, it's not a completely fair comparison, because we've used V0 at the moment for building in WebGIS with the free plan, and Bolt.new I've actually used previously with the pay plan. So maybe they're pretty much level in general. But the one thing I do know is that Bolt.new is more aware of Leaflet, more aware of using frameworks, more aware of WebGIS development, and V0 doesn't seem to have that capability as much. And just to prove my point, here is actually the WebGIS setup that we made in the previous video. So here, it's actually nearly the same thing. So I just put up a few prompts, and after 5 or 10 prompts, I think even less than 10 prompts, we had this application as a result. So it's got a nice header and whatever. It's got some few tools, and they actually work as well. As you can see, same thing, the UI is not perfect, but the actual MVP itself, I mean, this is an MVP if I've ever seen one. Scrappy, not everything works, but it is pretty decent. So that's the one thing that matters. Honestly, don't know what this button does. Zoom to features. Let me see if that works. Cool, that works as well. And you can even make a GeoJSON download. And this is also built in 10 minutes. So that being said, this just works better for WebGIS development. Honestly, I don't know for general web app development. Maybe V0 is better. I've heard very good things about it, but this is what worked for me. And I hope that you actually got some value out of this video. Either way, keep both in mind. Make sure to actually use bolt.new as well. Keep both in mind, and as you can see, this actually works for a minimum viable product. That being said, it is still a very impressive tool, but sadly we've actually run into the limit. So let's see if we can just refresh it one more time and see how far we've got with the current frameworks or the current prompts. We actually, it still only took us 15 minutes and we have something that pretty much works. With bolt.new I was a little further. I was also working a little more productive. Either way, we can switch base map right here. So we have the OpenStreetMap and the satellite image. We have the opportunity to draw lines, which I don't know if this UI is working properly, to be honest. I think the double click is actually cancelling everything. And obviously you don't have buttons right here either, or at least icons that display what the button does. That's the one problem with AI still, and we also encountered this in bolt.new, so honestly kind of blame them. I don't know which button is now supposed to end this draw action, but pretty nice. Then we have the opportunity or the possibility to draw a shape, which I also don't know why it's not saving, and the markers, and we can also delete them. Then the one big test is the nominated server actually working. So if I look for Paris, do I find Paris? Doesn't look like it. Now the API does work, that's the one thing I'm sure about. But what I feel like is the implementation has not been perfect yet. So usually it should be able to actually be as agentic that it identifies the fact that we should be seeing previews. That's something AI does not understand right now. But obviously me as a user and not that much of a developer, I do see which issues are in the current map, code, app, whatever. So if I was to ship this to a potential client, we would actually see right away where the improvements are, where we can actually fix everything we need to fix and what the things are that not working optimally. Or maybe even things that we don't need. Like for example, here we have zoom buttons from the leaflet framework, and the AI has also added in his own zoom buttons, but we didn't need those, right? And obviously I can just prompt it to fix that, to remove that, to add icons here, to make sure they actually don't display on top of the header. But just looking at this all together, it is a pretty impressive application so far. So what can I say? I think it is pretty impressive nonetheless. Sadly, I do not have the pay plan, and I'm not planning on getting it because I'm very happy with using bolt.new, but I will definitely keep up with the developments of V0 because it is a very impressive app. Sadly, not as good as bolt.new for WebGIS development. Anyways, I hope this has been a somewhat valuable video to you and that you actually understand the power and potential of using AI in WebGIS development. And I hope to see you in another video. Bye-bye. Concluding remarks, V0 as of right now for WebGIS development is just not as good as using bolt.new with cursor. So this is just the kind of scope of the video. However, this still proves to us that we can indeed deploy a WebGIS in probably an hour. I do not have the time or agency to do that right now with the backend, but we could build that, we could do that. It honestly doesn't require that much. So shipping a minimum viable product is just not impressive at all. It doesn't have to cost 5 or 10K. It is as simple as these few prompts, maybe even putting it in cursor and making sure the engineering part of it is actually decent. But even for an MVP, if you're only in need of a front end, this is enough. So just use bolt.new, maybe use V0 if that has your preference. But either way, you can definitely, with AI, build and deploy a WebGIS that is good enough for a MVP. So don't have the perfectionist mindset of, okay, it should have everything, it should have a backend, whatever. Chances are, if it is only an MVP or something that you're showing to a potential client, this is more than enough. So make sure to just use V0, make sure to use cursor, make sure to stay on top of these latest AI developments, and make sure that you do not spend too much on your MVP.